Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Waterville Planning Board meeting. We will start with approval of the October 22nd Planning Board minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion about the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Awesome. Unanimous, Anne.
Thank you.
Disclosure of conflict of interest. Does anybody have a conflict on the agenda on any of the votes that we'll take tonight?
Is the Java matter on for this evening?
I think we have to vote to add it.
I'm respectfully requesting that I recuse myself.
You have to turn your mic on.
I'm recusing myself from the Java matter. I've known the Javas, I would say, all my life. I've been to the same church with them. I've served on the bench with Joseph Java. I've known John Java's father, who's passed away a few years ago. I've known the family very well, and I want to avoid any appearance of impropriety.
Okay.
And I'll recuse myself too. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Anybody else? Okay. Item number 3, Popo is requesting approval for revisions to previously approved plan. Come on up.
He's going to put it up for you. Thank you.
Okay, compare with the last set plan, and there's some changes. The first thing is we moved the dumpster from the right corner to the left corner, because this part is far away from here. This neighbor, is a little bit far away. And next thing is we put one of the shed. It's 8 times 12. It's a 2 shed on the set plan. And the third thing is we're gonna install the stocky fence along here, and almost almost the whole parking, the whole food truck park. Yeah, there were like plants here on the old set plan, but we're gonna use the stocky fence here, and until the garage is a kind of L shape. Yeah,
Okay.
that's everything.
Any questions for Popo?
Pretty detailed last time.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I'll entertain a motion. Okay, I'll motion to accept the site plan revisions. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anybody from the public wish to discuss this matter? Okay. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, Popo.
Thank you so much.
Would you all mind signing now?
The plan?
The
Yep.
plan, they're over there.
Like right now?
Yeah. With black ink, right?
Item number 4, Newman Homes is requesting informal pre-application.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Allen from A.E. Hudson Engineers. It's good to see you guys again. This is Brandon Roberge from Newman Homes, and he's the owner. So what we're presenting tonight is just a kind of an introduction to one of the projects that we're doing up. This is not a great location map, but this is the interstate. Just past the interstate as you're going into Oakland, you see Shore Drive. Going down Shore Drive is Meadow Lane and Fieldstone Lane. Mr. Roberge has purchased this large property between the existing homes and the interstate. This is the remainder of that subdivision. And what he wants to do is put in some more homes right in this area up at the very north end of the subdivision. Through an existing right-of-way that they left when they did the previous subdivision for Meadow Drive. So Meadow Drive on this plan is right in this area here along the side. We're going in that existing right-of-way and then putting a spur road out to the side like this, and we're going to have 13 homes in there. These are small homes, generally two bedroom, one bath, about 1,000 square feet. And we decided to do just this portion of it now while we're preparing our DEP permits for a fuller build out. But this will allow him to get going now before, do some work this winter before going to DEP. The DEP permitting process, as far as I can tell, is completely stalled. And so it would be at least a year, 6 months to a year before we could get permits from DEP to do anything else. So this will be called Newman Meadows. And we've got 2 streets going in here. The main street that's going in here is Newman Lane, and the street out to the side here is Jasmine Lane. And this will be, the existing subdivision has private well and septic. And so his purchase agreement from the previous owner allows him to connect into that private well and septic, which is then in turn connected to the public systems. So we've got, it will eventually be treated by the public system for well and septic. This one is, I think, is around 35,000 square feet of new impervious area. So we aren't required to go to DEP for this small part of the development. When we do go to DEP, we will have to have stormwater ponds, the whole shooting match. But for this part, we've got to get letters from the fire department. Generally, I don't think that's a problem because there is an existing hydrant up on Meadow Drive just around the corner here. And we're looking at doing something else on this piece of property. And Chief Frost said as long as we have a public hydrant within 1,000 feet, we're all set. Eventually, we were thinking of putting it here, but actually the water system probably would not support putting new hydrants in there because where it's a private system, they didn't size it large enough for this. But it will be within 1,000 feet of the existing hydrant. So I guess that's about all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then we'll be back with a full development later. Yes, sir.
The existing properties on Shore Road.
Turn your mic off.
There are existing properties on Shores Road, so it looks like there's a vegetative buffer that's being put in, or?
Yes, This area down, well, you can see the white spike over here. That's the road where we're going into. This area over here is a drainage easement because the stormwater all comes down through there. That's, the area we're developing is this area right in here, up at the north end. There is an area between that. Most of this is existing open grass. The tree line is down here. So if you're driving along Meadow, you can see the tree line down here. And actually down approximately in this area is where the pump house is. Originally, Meadow and Fieldstone subdivisions were on a private system. They had wells. They've since connected to the public system. So this can be, there's a well there. They're on the top of a hill. Because they're on the top of the hill, they don't have enough water pressure. So this pump house down here brings city water pressure up to acceptable standards for water pressure.
And how many homes?
13.
13. So the hydrant's like off of Shore Road then, or?
The hydrant is on, I can't remember how to zoom in here. Let me try. There.
Yep.
And let me find the little hand. No. This is the existing hydrant right here.
Okay.
It's on Meadow Lane, I think. If you're looking on Google Earth, you can see it up here, kind of hidden back in the bushes.
Okay.
So, yeah, this distance from here, or from the hydrant down Newman Lane, and to the other ones here are less than 1,000 feet. And this is the same type, it's a multifamily development. That's something I did not mention earlier. This is the same sort of thing that we did up on off North Main Street, Mr. Violet's, City View Estates, City View Drive. And so these are schematic homes. The actual placement of where these homes are going to be is going to be varied a little bit. We just put them on here sort of schematically to show roughly how many homes would fit on, and sort of
Did you just say there'll be multifamily homes?
no, it's a multifamily development. These are single-family homes. I'm sorry, I probably didn't say that properly. But it's single-family homes in a multifamily development.
So they're condoized? Is that what that?
It'll be like a homeowners association that cares for most of it. So
Will
I
they
think,
own a lot, or?
no,
No, okay, yeah, that's what I thought, okay.
they'll own
The-
probably their house plus a certain distance, 10
Yeah.
feet, 20 feet outside their house. So they'll own essentially a postage stamp,
Yeah.
and then the common land is the remainder.
Yeah.
The entire parcel is 30 acres? 42, I'm sorry, wrong project. 42 acres, yes, sir.
The notes in the diagram we got says that the units may be constructed as single-family homes or duplexes. So,
If, it depends on the funding. Initially, Mr. Roberge is trying to get funding through Maine State Housing Authority, and if Maine State Housing will fund this, then there'll probably be the single-family homes. If they're being built by other funding sources, we may not have 13 individual homes. There may be some that are duplexes, but it's with the multifamily development, the thing that counts is the number of dwelling units. So we're looking just at 13 dwelling units, so.
Are these units for sale or for rent? For sale. For sale.
For sale, yeah. I just spoke for the microphone. Yeah.
But we do intend to do the single family rather than duplexes are goal
Yeah.
intent.
Is it possible you might have to like mix, or would you have to go all duplexes? And
Really trying to stay away from the duplex thing.
I have it on. So, oh, his, gotcha.
Yeah.
Really trying to stay away from the
Duplexes?
duplex if we can.
Okay.
Really trying to stick with the single family look, just blend with the rest of the subdivision.
Yeah.
Now, you said you were connecting to the city water and sewer.
Eventually, but it goes through the private system first.
Okay, what does that process look like?
Well, the existing system is in Meadow Drive up here, so we'll run a new main down the road here with a branch going out to Jasmine Lane. If there's more development done later on, we'll probably loop that around, so you get, looping is better in water supply, just to keep the water fresh. But it's all done.
At what
as
point
a-
would it connect to the city, though?
It connects to the city at the end of Meadow Lane, or Meadow Drive. The only connection to the city is from Shore Road.
It's like
For-
the
for the water.
existing development connects to the city.
Yeah, we connect
Essentially.
into the existing development, and then the existing development connects in the city. And I believe that's sort of at the end of Shore Road, because that's the last public street.
Okay.
And then, are you thinking about, so this like first road, is that just a turnaround, or is that for future development? No, the straight.
This year?
Yeah,
There'll be future development.
okay.
Yeah, this is just now it's kind of built as a turnaround.
Yep.
But eventually, the road goes down because I think the pump house is down here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a field road that goes down through there now, you can see. So we're upgrading that field road to make it up to city standards. This is just a turnaround here. You know, we haven't really figured out what the full development's going to look like, but it'll go down here some more. This road will continue over this way some as well.
Okay. And
So,
what about, is the timeline again?
we need it done yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
But we're,
Earthwork before,
there's no specific timeline right now,
Okay.
but we want to get as far along in the permitting process as we can before the grant's applied for. Because the closer you
yeah,
are to
gotcha.
permitting, you know,
Yep.
that gives you extra points in your grant funding.
Yep.
So we're trying to do as much as we can. That being said, I don't know if you have a meeting December 10.
The next meeting is January 14th.
yeah.
Okay. We will have, we should be able to come back to you at that point.
Okay.
January 10 would really rush it, because I want to take a couple days off. But by
They don't
January,
let you take any time off, do
No,
they,
they
Jeff?
never
I know,
do.
I know the battle.
you want to see the chain? So we can have a lot of progress made by January. So we probably
Okay.
will be back then. Yeah.
How long would you anticipate the construction of those? Those 13 units, is that one phase?
This is the first phase, yes.
Yep, so it'll be
And-
build the road and the houses all all at once.
Right.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, again, it depends on funding, because
Sure.
the infrastructure is very expensive. The houses are not cheap, but I think his intent is to build them next summer.
Yep. Great.
Nice.
Yeah.
They'll probably go fast.
Is that going to be a city road,
No,
a private road?
it's going to be a private road, but it's going to be built to city standards.
Okay.
So, it'll be private, but it'll be, on here I'm showing a 24-foot pavement,
Mm-hmm.
paved width and 2-foot shoulders, and so it's going to be a regular road, because the roads up there are quite nice. We want to have it.
Are all of those roads private?
Yes. Shore Road is the last public road,
Okay.
and then everything else is private.
Great. Any other questions? Wonderful. Well, thank you.
Okay.
We'll see you in January then.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, item number 5. City Council is requesting the Planning Board recommendation concerning revisions to Section 5.5 of the Rural Residential District. Ann.
This was requested by a developer who has an existing garage, and he'd like to add a dwelling unit above the garage, so he can't meet the current setback requirement, which is 50 feet from the road. This lot has 2 fronts because it's on a corner. Under our ordinance, the side of the property that abuts the street is considered a front. So a corner has 2 fronts. So I think his garage is about 40 feet from the Trafton Road side. Honestly, I don't remember checking the distance from West River Road. I believe that it does meet that requirement. So he wouldn't have to have the 20-foot setback, which is what I proposed he could do with a smaller setback and still add his unit. But I proposed a 20-foot setback simply because that's a setback in the residential A zone and the residential B zone. And of course, that wouldn't require anyone to build that close to the street. It would just give them the option. It would make more land developable, and it would give them some flexibility in development. So in other words, if there were wetlands, steep slope, whatever, trees they wanted to provide, this would give them more flexibility in siting their house.
Any questions? Yes.
Why was the original setback set at 40 feet? I was just curious.
It's 50 feet.
50 feet.
Honestly, I have no idea. That was established in 1971, and this is a rural area with lots of farms. I'm sure even more farms back in 1971. So I'm assuming that the minimum lot size requirement in the rural residential zone is 20,000 square feet, roughly half an acre, and that was established because you need to have half an acre to have a septic system and a well on the same lot. So I'm just guessing that given that size lot, maybe 50 feet seemed like a reasonable setback, or maybe it's just that at that time that's where most of the houses were, 50 feet back from the road. I don't know how maybe we could find some history of it, but I really don't know. We can take a look at aerial photos and see. If you want me to do the research, I could do that.
There's nothing that stands out to you, though, as it being a necessary setback
No.
these days, right?
No.
It's outdated, probably,
Yeah.
requirement.
Dave?
The one thing that just popped into my head was, those are the fastest roads in Waterville. And if a car were to go off a road, there's a good chance it could go 20 feet. Probably less of a chance it could go 50 feet.
Is there a way to change his zoning to allow him to put this above his garage without changing the whole
Yeah.
zone?
You
Does
could
that make
do
more
that,
sense?
but he's surrounded by other properties in the rural residential zone, so some people would call that spot zoning.
Yeah, I think we've been trying to sort of, revision going forward, how we can make more space for more houses. The zones that were put together 50 years ago didn't really think about how big our city might get someday. So spot zoning isn't necessarily like, or like we're doing a contract zone for him specifically. You know, I think there's probably a reason why we're thinking about this, because it might reflect some of the other things we're trying to do across the other zones, which is like make more room for more houses. Do you think that it's a valid concern about, I mean, is that something that we worry about as far as roads, houses being set back? On West River Road, there's not a 50-foot setback, or is there?
Right, there is, because it's
There
a
is.
rural residential zone.
Unless,
Yeah, so-
unless the building was built prior to,
Prior
unless
to
it's
that.
right.
Non-conforming.
Right, so it wouldn't
So-
require anybody to build a new house close to the road. It just allows them
Yeah.
the flexibility.
I don't, yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I wouldn't mind having a conversation about maybe it doesn't need to be 20 feet, maybe it can still be further, but allow, maybe 30 or 35 feet would be
What is it that he needs?
better.
I believe on the Trafton Road side is building a setback 40 feet. Let me see. He brought his plan to you for informal pre-application review at the last meeting. So you all have this. I'm just not sure that this is to scale. When I printed it off, it changes the scale a bit, so, yeah. I think he needs a 40-foot setback, so 35 certainly would work for him, if you didn't want to go all the way to 20, given that he's not even asking for a 20-foot setback.
But in general, I thought that we were trying over time to relax the zoning requirements to allow for denser housing opportunities, just as like a general goal. I mean, it seems to be what the city council is interested in us
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, and the state as well. I just, like I said, I worry about those roads. With the speed, I would, yeah.
But that would be, yeah, but if someone builds a structure 20 feet from the road, they would probably have that in mind.
I'm sorry, what was your point, Scott? If they build it 20 feet from the road, what was the rest of that? I didn't hear what you said.
I mean, they're doing it with knowledge that that's a high-speed road, so they would have a reason for doing it. Might not be a good reason, but,
Yeah, I mean, chances are when there is more development out there, it's going to be by developers and not a person buying a lot of land and saying, I want a house built. It's going to be developers.
yeah, and then they'll ask for the speed limit to be reduced. If you've got so much development density, wouldn't the speed limits go down?
Well, that's a major arterial. I think
No,
we'll
it
just
could
see more and
stay
more
here.
traffic on it.
It would probably be a private road that goes off of, say, West River Road or Trafton Road, and then bends off to one side, and then houses are built, potentially the backs of them 20 feet away from one of those roads, if that makes sense visually.
Yeah.
Are we changing, I'm sorry,
So-
are we changing the size of the lot?
No,
No.
the proposal is
Just
just
the
to
setback.
decrease the
I guess I don't
front
really
setback.
understand how allowing a house to be built closer to the road increases the density if the lot sizes
I
are
guess that's
the
my
same.
question. I don't think it does.
I don't either.
Well, it's the ADUs, or the,
Well, you can
Still have to
still
have-
only build the same amount of housing
Still have to have half an
units
acre
on
for
the
that
same
house.
size land, so it
Okay.
doesn't really increase the density. Just
Well-
allows you to position it closer.
But,
the
and
road.
to Ann's point, right, it could be that there's a bunch of the land of that lot
Yeah.
that isn't suitable for development.
Right.
And maybe it would need to be closer to, but, I mean, we're trying to make a change for somebody who wants to basically build an ADU, right? I mean, maybe it's not classified as an ADU, but,
Yeah, a second dwelling.
yeah.
unit.
And so,
I personally don't see how this is going to help increase housing overall. I don't see a lot of reason to try and restrict this person in particular from doing what he's trying to do per se. So that's why I suggested some type of a special situation for this situation rather than
Right.
trying to change the whole zoning
Well,
ordinance.
in this particular case, if you apply it broadly, he has a garage that isn't set back 50 feet, right? So it is creating a second dwelling unit on his property, correct?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know what the exact requirements are around that. Like, are there other instances where you could just build, like, could every plot of land on that road now build a garage that's only 30 feet back and, or, you know, and then put a second dwelling unit above it? Right? Is there any need for that, or like, I mean, just because does that give enough space around each unit to have a dwelling, or could you possibly put 3 units on one plot? I mean, I'm not good at conceptualizing things just without seeing it. But.
Yeah, I think it was Sam who was saying it doesn't increase density if they don't have the number of square feet per unit that's required.
Right.
right.
Okay, so you need you need a specific number of square feet per unit on a plot of
Correct.
land.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Does that additional leeway in the setback help create situations where we might have, because that 50-foot setback isn't developable, right?
Right now, that's right. So if you
Right.
decrease
Right.
the setback requirement,
So
there
it
would be
would
more
increase-
developable area.
Right,
It just
so-
gives you flexibility.
So does the,
And there,
so to Sam's point, does that, the parameters around, is it developable land excluding the setbacks? Where you need a certain number of square feet per unit? Or does your, does that
No, no.
increase your
No, it's
square
a lot
footage?
size.
your density is based on the entire lot. It doesn't
Okay,
have
so
anything
it
to do with
doesn't, so the setback doesn't matter, it
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
decrease
It's
or-
possible there are other existing garages
That
that
are.
were constructed before the zoning was established in 1971, so, but I don't know. I haven't
Yeah.
researched what's there and could be converted to housing.
And is it just the 50 feet from the road, Ann, or all the property lines?
Only, it's just from the road, but he's on a corner, so he's.
Well,
he-
yeah,
he
no, I
needs to
understand.
be-
I'm just wondering if it would change setbacks for like neighbor, you know what I mean, in the zone.
Not the side or the rear,
Okay.
it wouldn't change.
I'd like to take some time and do some research into what other municipalities are doing. I mean, we're surrounded by other municipalities that have a lot more of this type of land, and I would like to take some time to see what they're doing, and so
Is that a motion to table?
it is a motion to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
Would you like to bring it back on January 14th?
I'm fine with that.
Thanks.
Okay, all those, yeah.
Just, who's going to do the research? I'm new to this.
I invite everybody to do the research. I'm not planning on giving a presentation.
So as a minimum, you're going to do some research, and then okay, thank you.
And is it
And I can
possible,
get, I'm sorry, Sam.
is it possible to check with, like the fire department and just ask about safety with like the speed limits and like Dave had brought up? Like, are those concerns? Is that something like we should be taking into consideration? Like, I am interested, like, do they have any data around that or anything? Like, I'm not sure.
I think
I'm
that's a
not
good
sure
point.
who I would
Yeah,
ask,
yeah.
but-
Before we make a decision, I'd like to know how it's going to affect, if it's going to affect public works, fire, public safety, travel. That's what I would like to know, so I'm going to support the motion by my colleague.
I think if you ask Chief, he might be able to, I mean, I'll reach out to him, I don't mind. Yeah, Public Works, that's a good point too, like with snow removal and plowing and does it have something to do with like where you put the snow? Because in town, they're removing the snow.
I spent
They're
4
not
years
doing it there.
I spent 4 years living on 196 in Topsom, headed out towards Lewiston. It was 55 miles an hour there, and I would not have wanted my house 20 feet from that road.
Yeah.
So,
Another thing I can do is ask the developer to give me the specific dimensions, because I can't tell on this, at
Okay.
this scale. I need to know what the exact setback is on this garage. And then if you decided, well, he only needs 40 feet, then let's set it at 40 feet instead of 50 feet.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. All those in favor of Dave's motion? Okay.
Just for the record, so who seconded?
Cassie, I believe.
Cassie, thank you.
Okay, so I'll motion to waive closure so that we can add an item to the agenda. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. I will motion to add, Ann, do you want to wordsmith the item on the agenda?
This would be informal pre-application review for the project at 15 Washington Street.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion to add that to the agenda?
second.
Thank you. All those in favor? And 2 abstentions. All right.
I've got a plan here, I'm gonna load on the computer, so.
Oh, it's awful.
You want to see that, okay?
Yes.
So, we're here to start. My name is Boyd Snowden, Snowden Consulting Engineers. I'm here representing John Jabber regarding this project. I know he's been in front of you folks in the past. John asked me to help him with this probably a month and a half or so ago. So we are going through the process right now. We have a site design we're working with that I wanted to bring to the planning board and specifically talk about the buffer strip that's on the north end of this project. So I'll pull over here to kind of show you what we're looking at. So what we have here is we have ended up with 56 units around these multiple buildings. Some of these this one has 5 units per building, some of them have 6. We've got a 64-foot wide area with access drive plus parking for all the apartment buildings. We changed a little bit here. We originally, John had like a T-type turnaround for fire department, and we ended up with a cul-de-sac here, so we could put a couple of units out back here as well. Again, we're kind of early on the design stage. Water main here in the street, as well as sewer. These will all have multi-levels, you know, basement level, and then, which is one apartment set, and then a first floor and second floor on most of them. Dumpster, screened-in dumpster out here on the back. So one of the things we wanted to talk to the planning board, and thank you for letting us come tonight. One of the things we wanted to talk to the planning board about is drainage. So just to get your bearings, Washington Street's over here, Lincoln Street's up here. There's a lot of runoff that comes from Lincoln Street across Laura and Guyette.
Yeah, Ms. Giddy's.
Yep, property, as well as Danny DeBroad. So basically what happens is the water comes off Lincoln Street and through a culvert on the Lincoln Street, comes across Miss Guide's property?
Giddy, I think it is.
Giddy,
Yeah.
okay. Comes across her property and pretty much travels in this wooded buffer area. It's fairly flat. And what happens is it actually ends up flooding out part of her property. She's talked to John, and he can elaborate on that in a minute. So she's got some drainage issues, not related to this site, but with what's coming at her, and just a lack of slope, I guess, to get it down along this end. So we went out, John and I looked at the property in this 30-foot buffer area, which is this stretch right here. And it's a lot of hardwoods in there, a lot of scrub brush and stuff that really hasn't been taken care of, or really hasn't been managed at all. Right now, if you look at this, if you stand on this property and look into these properties, obviously with all hardwood, there's no screening at all. So, you know, you can look right into those properties. So one of the things that John and I were talking about is a couple things, actually. Possibly planting a row of arborvitae along the property line to provide better screening for these people up here. This 30-foot wooded buffer area was part of the deed. I talked to Ann about it the other day, so the only thing we can think of, nobody really knows when this was created, but one of the things Ann had suggested, and I think she's on to something, is probably this was all one parcel at one point, all the way up to Lincoln Street. And whoever sold this piece out said, well, I want to maintain a wooded buffer to protect my interests on this upper half. So we think that seems logical to me, but we really don't know other than it's in the deed. So one of the things John has talked to some of the abutters, Laura and Danny Dubois, and also the Jones here on the corner, is trying to clean that area up for the benefit of both, for their benefit as well as from his benefit for the development. And in cleaning that up, if we were to do something with these arborvitae hedgerow like this, we could then come into this 30-foot area and provide some better drainage, which would, first of all, take the runoff that's coming onto this property and better divert it around the site to really help not only ourselves get rid of that water off the property before it even gets into our property, but also that's going to alleviate some of their drainage as well. So I guess we're not really looking for a decision tonight from the planning board, obviously being informal, other than the fact that we wanted to get your input to see if this is something that you, the planning board, might be agreeable to when we come forward, before we get too far into the design. So, assuming the abutters are on board. So,
Do we know where the abutters stand on that right now?
John, you want to speak to that?
Well, Mrs. Giddy's her property, the water backs up so bad, you can actually see it. It goes about 40 or 50 feet up onto her lawn. She has a big apple tree where you can see it washed away, so you can see how high it was. And so she's the one who has the worst problems with it. And then where it comes down, it gets stuck in that area right in here. That's just either because it hasn't been cleared up and it doesn't go. The other young lady, I can't think of her name, Mrs. Spears, she's been here at the other meetings. Her biggest concern was she doesn't want any water coming onto her property from this project. Now I understand why, because right now all the water is being dumped onto her property from the top. Because our property sits up higher, so all the water has to come down that line, and it would either dump onto her property. I guess what we were talking about today was the possibility of putting a swale in this 30-foot buffer and catch all the water, and then come down the 40-foot buffer on our property as well, and then have all the water dump into that area to where it's supposed to go. I think what might have happened is, over the years, when they built this property, this piece that we're on now, I think the water got blocked into that area, because they brought so much fill in. So now it's caused a swamp, and caused up all this backup to these neighbors.
So the thought is with a row of arborvitae that could grow, 30 feet tall or whatever. Right now, like I said, if you stand out there right now, and I stood out there with John this afternoon, you could literally look right onto their property with literally no visual buffer at all. So if this gets approved by the planning board and built, these people are gonna be looking right through these hardwood with no screening. And they're actually above this site, so even if you put like something down here or whatever, there really isn't gonna be a whole lot of screening. So my thought was, if we could pick up the drainage here on our side and then plant a row of arborvitae that does grow up, 20, 30 feet high, it'll provide them with a screening buffer. I know if I was one of these landowners budding, I would appreciate that. So I know you've talked to a couple of them.
Yeah.
Laura and Danny, and they are receptive.
They're
to that.
receptive to it. Jason on the end.
So the only one that maybe we haven't talked to yet is Ms. Spear, but it sounds like if her issue is drainage and we can, so there's a wetland down here, so that's really where the water wants to go. I do agree with what John is saying. Probably years ago, before all the fill was brought in here, the water just kind of cascaded across the property and made it to the wetland. When all this fill was put in years ago, it just kind of stopped it, and the water had to travel along this fairly mild slope. So the only way that's going to push out through there is if it builds up and gets enough head to drive it that way. So that's what's causing all this flooding of these people on this high side, probably from this fill years ago.
So I guess I'm confused about how building in the buffer zone and replacing all of those trees with arborvitae solves this problem.
Yep. So what we'd end up doing is we'd end up planting like an arborvitae along the property line. And then on our side of the property, we would actually redevelop or develop a constructed diversion swale to divert the water around versus right now, which is just a wooded area with blow-down trees and everything that's restricting the flow. So we would try to get the water, or we would get the water out and around our site. It would help us, because one of the things we've got to deal with this being stormwater and eventually going to go to DEP for permitting, we have to treat all the impervious area. So one of the things we want to do is we don't want to be treating off-site runoff. So we want to get rid of that water before it gets to our stormwater treatment system. So we gain the benefit by creating that diversion ditch. They gain the benefit by us giving them some relief on their property of the existing drainage. So that's how that would work, and that would all happen in that stretch right in the 30 feet. But we would replace the hardwood and everything with this row of arborvitae.
So how are you going to get around the deed restriction?
So that's what we've got to talk to the attorney. The language in the deed, it does say that whoever owns this property has a right to maintain that, to trim, do things like that. So I think legally, I'm not a lawyer, but when I read the language of the deed, it seems like we have flexibility in there as long as we maintain a buffer. And to me, the arborvitae would be a better buffer than what's there currently.
Well, they have to maintain a buffer anyways because it's a commercial A development against a residential property, yes?
The parking has to be buffered in the commercial zone.
Okay.
Like, if we were gonna put a fence there, no one would, you wouldn't see the fence. From sitting in their house, you'd be looking
Yeah.
right in.
I'm not asking you to put a fence in.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
I'm not asking you to put a fence in.
Oh, no, you're not. We're thinking of ways to buffer between the properties.
I-
What would be the best way to buffer the property?
I mean, for me, I think from a site plan perspective, I think it's a good plan. You know, I think there's an argument that can be made that it would be unreasonable to think that forever one would be able to maintain a natural buffer, right? I mean, trees die, right? So I think in the last part of this paragraph, you know, provided that a natural buffer zone is maintained, that would, to me, be the argument that you're meeting that requirement. So I think it's a good plan from a site plan perspective.
I mean, I don't have a problem with new trees being planted. My concern, I guess, is that when we were here doing a rezone, part of the argument was this can be rezoned to commercial A because you'll always have that 30-foot buffer that's in your deed, so the new apartments won't be that close to your property line. So I think, like, now that I'm seeing some of these buildings a lot closer to those property lines, that I would want to hear from these neighbors that they're comfortable with that.
Sure.
I mean, the
Like, that's
30-foot
why the
buffer is still
deed-
being maintained, right?
But it's not, because they're building within the 30-feet buffer.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with the planting of the arborvitae or any of that other site work. It's just building within a 30-foot buffer that's on a deed, especially when the zoning was granted and that was one of the parts of the zoning, right? Like, we were assuring the neighbors that, yes, this buffer will always exist. So I think that's my major concern with this. But other than that, like, yes, I'd love that you're going to
Yeah.
improve the area and it would be beneficial to all neighbors. It's just, I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that those are single-family homes in a fairly, I know it's not like rural, but like they are more private lots in town comparatively to some places. And we're asking to put 56 units behind their house. So I want to be mindful of those things too,
Sure, understand.
when we're
So-
talking about changing.
Yeah, and I guess talking from my standpoint, I was looking at this as a possibility of a win-win.
Yeah.
Right, so-
Oh, I completely see what you're saying, Boyd. It's just like, having 56 houses behind you does significantly change the way that you're living your life.
Yeah,
and
and
you're quiet.
I apologize. I didn't realize that those were encroaching into that 30-foot buffer. So,
How much are they encroaching into it?
Well, here's the line. So we did, I mean, on this concept plan that we're talking about, you know, originally I had it here right at the edge. And then we get really tight right in here, right? So then we were looking at as well, if, again, with a win-win, hopefully with you know, up here, the benefit for the arborvitae, fix the drainage in there, and in exchange for that, or in coordination with that, we give ourselves a little bit of room down here, and we fix this up, so basically, you know, we get the drainage taken care of, again, trying to, from my standpoint, just looking at it as a win-win for everybody. But I certainly understand your position as far as with the butters, and that's something we can talk to the butters about. You know, we can pull this back, as I had it originally, you know, on the first concept plan, to stay out of there. It just gets really tight when you start grading and everything. So even if I pulled it here, we're still gonna be grading into it, right? Just to get the grades to work, so, but I think we can, I think once we show these people the plan, and we certainly could meet with them before the planning board and kind of walk through this with them, show them this plan, make sure they're all on board and everything before we get too far in the weeds, or too far into design, but
Would it be just those 4 people?
I believe the buffer's only along their property.
Yeah, actually.
I mean, all of the abutters will be notified, obviously, but I'm just thinking of the,
It's actually only most impacted, right, would be these 4, because.
well, right, so like those are the ones that the deed would impact, right? So I'm just trying to think of like the deed
Yes.
and, you know, to the point of it was probably there to protect the interests of these homes.
Right. Or
And give,
whatever was there.
yeah, or whatever was there and give it some privacy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this would be any more or less private, but I'm just trying to be mindful of how, if we're building on that buffer, like, does that change things, right? So.
We can certainly talk to, John,
Yeah.
weigh in on that piece that's in the deed as far as, again, I'm not a lawyer, but when I read that, it sounds like as long as we maintain some type of buffer, which the arborvitae, I mean, a lot of ordinances in towns, they provide you can either provide a 30 or 50-foot buffer, or a row of arborvitae, or a fence, a lot of.
Yeah,
things are like
but this isn't the ordinance, right? Like, this is a
Yeah.
deed restriction, so that's where it's different.
Right.
Because it's saying vegetation of 30.
Right. I mean, even if, from a legal standpoint, it would be, yes, you can replace what's there with that. It's still a 30-foot natural buffer, and building buildings into that, well, those aren't natural,
Yeah.
right? I think that's where you might run into some problems there.
Yeah, we'll get the attorney to read into that as far as what we can and can't do in that area. So, and as I said, we can pull those buildings back just from an overall site standpoint. And I think as far as making everything work, I think this will work better, but if we can't, we'll pull the buildings back in, so we can make that work. But I do think, regardless of where those buildings land, whether it's outside of 30 feet or within, I do think the row of arborvitae's is the right thing for the abutters, based upon what's there, so.
Any other comments?
Boyd, when,
Go ahead, Tom.
when this was last before the planning board, you were talking about removing the fill that was on the site and building at a lower elevation. Are you still planning to remove the fill?
Some of it. So we're just starting the grading right now. So basically what I would envision is going to happen is we're probably going to slope up from Washington Street for a certain distance, let's say 100 feet, and then we'll start pitching to the back. Trying to balance as much. I mean, we're not going to remove a ton of material. I want to kind of try to balance everything out, so we're moving things around the site, but not hauling a bunch off or hauling a bunch in. So, but there will be some grade changes for sure, because it's one big flat area.
Yeah.
The fill we were talking
Yeah.
about, excuse me, it's gonna be basement, so we're gonna excavate all those spaces. So we're gonna be going down
Right.
4, 5, 6, 7 feet. So all of that fill will go off-site at a bare minimum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you still thinking of these being like apartments, John?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything's
Same idea.
same idea.
Yeah.
I mean, what we've done now is we went from 12 units before, to once Boyd got involved, said this is a better arrangement, so we went to 10. And then so for financial things, instead of being 5, some of them are 6.
Yeah.
But it's 56 units instead of 60 that we talked about before.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be some, and John and I have been talking about this, there'll be some grade challenges, obviously from the road standpoint, you've got to have access to the apartments on this side, and you've got basement units down below, which are accessed here by this end, so there's going to be some grade, that's on me to figure out how to make those grades work, get stormwater out, so.
It is difficult because it's so skinny.
It is.
Are they still going to be 1 and 2 bedrooms, John? Is that the plan?
They're really the same.
Idea?
There's going to be
Same?
2 bedrooms, the upstairs, downstairs, on the top, and on the bottom, there'll be daylight basements, which will be 1 floor. Those will be 900 square feet or 1,200 square
Yep.
feet.
Okay.
The other apartments upstairs, downstairs, those will be 1,200 square.
Yeah, like a duplex kind of
Duplex, yes.
site.
2
Yeah.
bedrooms upstairs, living
Nice.
room.
So
Great.
I think it's, from the from you folks' standpoint, we'll definitely meet with the abutters to get a gauge as to how they're feeling about it, probably talk to your
And Mrs. Giddy would be very happy to get the water off her
I'm
property.
sure she will.
Yeah.
She's definite, I know the guy in the end just bought the place, he's happy with it. And I'll talk to Danny, he's an old high school buddy of mine, I'll talk to him, see what he says. Because we want to do is try to give something back by saying, we'll take care of all the water from the uphill on our property in this 30-foot space.
And we'll
Is it-
get a legal opinion on what
Yeah.
we can do
Yeah.
in here, and then that'll be part of the package we submit to you folks
Yeah.
when we come back.
When are you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Boyd, are you doing like some sort of catch basin, or are you going to try to do like like a soil filter or something in the back there?
Back here?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm thinking what's gonna end up happening is we'll do like a underground grass filter.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yep.
So there'll be a collection system, throughout the roadway. Not quite sure what we're gonna do out back here yet because it's low, but somewhere or another, we're gonna get water. I might end up with a couple different locations for stormwater.
Okay.
One DEP likes that, they'd rather us not put all our eggs in one basket. So maybe some of this would drain to here, like this half, and then maybe this half would drain to here, back here, and all of it will drain into that wetland area. So,
Okay.
we will have that, depending on what happens, we have to do something with the drainage, again, on the high side coming at us to get it around our site, no matter what. So where that happens, hopefully it can be within that 30-foot, that gives us a little room to play.
And then is that like the dumpster that's kind of on the, yeah.
Yes.
Part of it.
It's a screened in.
Would you like try to put some snow and stuff there, John? Like when you're trying to,
We'll find a way, we might end up moving the dumpster left so we can push the snow
back into that
back
corner?
into that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could put the dumpster over here as well, right, to push over here.
Yeah.
So you've got this whole area right here, you could have the snow removal, so. Yeah, we're still early. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to meet, and we were looking at December 10th, but it's actually worked out well for us, actually having you folks invite us here tonight, is just so you could put your eyes on kind of where we're headed and
Yeah.
just kind of get any feedback from you folks as to concerns, questions you might have before we get too far into the design. So.
No, I would say my only concern is just building within that buffer and
Yeah.
how that's received.
Will you send this draft to us so the board can have a chance to study it?
As it is right now?
As it is, as a
Happy to do
draft.
that. Happy to do
What is your time frame for, over here,
As soon as you can get,
for
as soon as you
submitting?
can get started, John, like ready to do.
that. John's ready to go tomorrow.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, but now.
It'll probably,
It'll be
yeah.
one construction, normal construction
Mm-hmm.
bills where you don't get into winter costs. and-
Yeah.
Are you still hoping to do those like prefabbed things, or is it going to be more of a stick build now?
It's not, yeah, it's kind of a combination.
Okay.
Right now, they build walls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they
So
like
it's
ship
gonna
it.
come to- It's gonna come off a truck in a 15-foot panel with the doors already in, the windows framed,
Yeah.
not in it. And then, because the environmental or the weather codes now and insulation, so all that will be already right on there.
Right.
So we'll go and,
So once once you've done your earthwork, you should be able to put up the buildings fairly quickly because they'll,
it
yeah,
takes 3 weeks to stand a building.
yeah,
Yeah.
So,
it's going to be
So one of the
next
things-
summer.
One of the things we probably will do, once we kind of finalize the concept plan and everything and get into further in design, is we'll want to get started on this without going to DEP initiatives. We'll phase it in.
Okay.
We'll design, John and I talked about it, I said, the best thing to do on these sites like this is design the whole thing, the whole all the grading and everything, so we know where everything's going to go, and then we'll back off phase one, and we'll say phase one is going to be these first 6 units plus the roadway access, right, for the fire department and everything. And then, once that gets rolling, then we'll submit to DEP for the full, for the full plan.
Okay.
makes the banks a lot happier too.
Yeah, no, of course. And DEP takes forever.
So I guess that would be the other question. When we come to you, we'll probably show you the full build out, but it may be showing you as for approval, phase one.
Do you mind just delineating on the plan then, like phase one, phase two?
Yeah,
Um,
do that.
Then that should be fine.
Yeah, we'll give it like a
Yeah.
line where it's gonna stop. I mean, we'd have to build a road and everything, no matter what, just to give fire department
Yeah.
access and everything, but that's the plan at this point.
Tom?
I'm recused from voting, but I believe I'm able to participate in discussion. Mr. Jabba, could you go to the microphone for a moment? How are you tonight? Haven't seen you in a while.
Good, my friend. How you doing, Tony?
I'm looking at the deed that I guess we've been referring to tonight, and you own the property.
Yes.
So you are either a successor or an assigned in this.
Yes.
And I don't have any problems with, you know, the water. I think you folks are going to deal with that in good faith. But what is it your plan is to do with the buffer, the trees?
With the buffer, we want to set it up so the water runoff can go in that area. So we want to put the trees in the buffer, the arborvitaes.
Okay, but is it anyone's intent to remove any of the buffer?
Yes, I mean,
Okay, let me ask you this then, and I mean, someone mentioned you're not a lawyer, I mean, I hate to be the lawyer in this.
I know
crowd,
that.
But what do we do with the language here where it says the grantee herein, his successors and assigns, which you're one of them, shall have the right to trim and maintain said buffer strip to his satisfaction, provided that a natural buffer is maintained. And then if you go a paragraph above, it says the above described parcel of the land are conveyed subject to the following deed restrictions, which shall be deemed a covenant running with the land. When it runs with the land, it stays with the land forever. There's nothing we can do here to change that. So that's where I am. I mean, you're saying you're going to remove some of the buffer. This here says that buffer runs with the land. In other words, if that is called Washington Street, we can't change Washington Street because that name runs with the land. So I'm asking you again, how much of the buffer, if any, you believe can be removed?
well, Tom, we haven't been to you guys or my family, whatever, to talk about what we can do. The worst thing happens, if we had to, and it's a no to say we don't want that at all, we could make it work by moving the property so we're not in the buffer. We could stay out of that buffer and just clean it up and do the things that we're doing to it. We kind of wanted to come and say, okay, we'd like to solve this problem. So we thought if we can do the buffer and move into the buffer slightly, that's great. If by law, if there's nothing we can do, and maybe.
Well, that's my thought. I'm not going to say that's my legal opinion. That's my thought after being in this business for 44 years. But, I mean, I don't want to do something and then it comes back to us from the law court and it's cost everybody thousands and thousands of dollars because we've overlooked something here. You know, we have agreements and we have covenants, and we have restrictions, but when something runs with the land, it kind of make it a point because it says provided, you can do whatever you want, but provided the buffer zone is maintained the way you want to maintain it. You can trim it and whatever, but the buffer, as it stood at that time, is going to stay with the land, John.
So stay with it, Tom. That means we can't build in it, right? If we put the buffer up, if we put,
can
keep the trees that are there.
Plant more trees in it.
Plant
if you
more
want.
trees in it.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying to me, Tom, is the legal advice I get.
If there are 50 trees there and you want to add 5 to make it 45, you're fine. But if there are 50 trees and you want to make it 35, I think we have a problem.
Well, we're going to go from 50.
By the language of the deed.
We're going to go from 50 to 100 and something. I guess, Right. from my standpoint, just thinking about this again, if we, according to the way I read that, and again, I'm an engineer, right? So the way I read that, it sounds like as long as we maintain a buffer at that 30 feet, I understand what you're saying about running with the land, but if we planted a hedgerow, I'm not sure if the way I read that we can't grade this area to get rid of runoff. If we kind of tree for tree, you know what I mean? So.
I don't know.
I don't disagree.
Which is-
Did you say tree for tree?
Well, what I'm saying is, yeah, let's say there are 100 trees up there and the deed says you can, trim, maintain, I forget exactly what the wording is. But if we planted 100 trees up here that are more conducive to the butters and for our development, and then graded in here, maybe not put the buildings in, but maybe graded in there, I wonder if that wouldn't meet the legal,
Which is why you guys are going to
which is
see.
why we're gonna get a legal.
You need
Yeah.
a legal opinion, because it does
Right.
say
I'm not a lawyer, that's
Right.
what I'm saying.
within 30 feet.
But it also says to maintain the natural trees and vegetation, right? Does that, would that include cutting them all down and replacing them with new ones? Or is that not maintaining the natural trees and vegetation at that point?
Well, are you looking at the same thing I'm looking at? I mean, you're looking at the word "the." I mean,
And you're right, Tom.
I mean, if it says agrees to maintain a natural tree and vegetation, that's A, but then he was saying to maintain the, which means something
Right.
that's existing.
Yeah, so,
That's the problem that I have, John.
Yeah, and, but again, I think, I mean, the logical side of my brain is saying that that's not possible forever.
well, but
Well, your brain's playing tricks on you.
Because there could be disease that
But
comes
there's a difference
through, there
between
could
that
be
and cutting them
pests,
down, though,
that,
so-
You know,
And there's a lot of them, because of the swamp, have fallen down.
yeah.
In the meantime,
Yeah.
as long as there's 100 trees there, and they're not diseased, no evidence as to any disease
Yeah.
right now, then they stay.
Yeah,
And
but
then if 20 of them are diseased, then that's something.
in
we
this,
have to discuss.
the second half of the paragraph says that they have the right to trim and maintain,
But not-
provided that a natural buffer zone is maintained. So that's the last sentence.
Well, it says maintain said, not a, said.
No,
And then it goes on,
Provided that
natural
a-
buffer zone is maintained.
that a natural
Said
buffer zone.
Buffer strip to his satisfaction,
Right,
provided that a natural buffer zone is maintained.
so,
Tom, is this something
both.
neighbors, if the neighbors all agreed? I don't know.
They would need to amend the deed, wouldn't they? It would need to
The
be,
deed would have to be,
yeah.
we all know that, and I don't want to speak for it. We need housing here in this city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that as well
Right.
as good people do. And I can't imagine anyone would want to sabotage this project. I think it's a good project. I think it's a great location. As I sit here, I think my job is to make sure that these things don't come back to us. If you remember well, back in '86 and '87, and your dad was part of it, God bless his soul.
With Bobby Ferris?
Shopping center. which,
Bobby Ferris. Yeah.
The city was sued, I was the mayor, I was in the neighborhood. And as the mayor, I voted for the project. And I had my neighbors, they weren't too pleased with me. But the matter went up to the law court, but we dotted our i's and crossed our t's. And God bless Authority, it came back in our favor. But it costs an awful lot of money, that's what I'm trying to avoid here.
I agree, Tom. I mean, if it's, don't move the houses into the 30 feet, that's, I mean, and if we can go and put the trees up and put the water so we can get the water to run off properly, we were just trying to say, you know, kind of working hand in hand. I know the neighbors will be very behind, now there's really only 3 neighbors. There's one really close and then the other lady and the other one I'll talk to. I didn't know if they come in, if they say yes, like if I come to your office and say, Tom, what do I do if I want to change this? Is there anything we can do?
Well, now you're asking for a legal opinion.
Hey, free advice.
that's
Let me-
beyond
let
the
me-
purview of the.
All right, yeah, I think
Okay,
you have till January to sort it all out,
okay.
all right? But, yeah,
What-
so there, I think we're all sort of on the same page there with that.
Well, one thing I want to be clear of, it sounded like you were at times talking about intruding on the 30-foot buffer, and I think I heard you say you're going to back off on that, and then,
I'm not saying,
We'll get a legal opinion on it, what we can and can't do, I think. That's where,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable making that decision. I think John's attorney needs to look at this, read the deed, and say to us, this is what you can do, or if you want to get rid of that, then this is what you need to do to get rid of that. I think there's a step that is beyond engineering.
It is a unique deed restriction. So I would,
Yeah, so
Um,
we'll get that legal opinion and then present that when we come back.
Sounds good.
But I just wanted to get a feel from the planning board as far as concerns, questions before we get too knee deep in the design, so.
good. Any other questions about the design? Okay, thanks, guys. We'll see you in January.
When do you think you might be ready to come back?
John would like to say.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'm hoping January.
I,
Okay, so